welcome to EZAnime. Today is a special day for all of us because it's the first time on EZAnime that we've talked about Gundam. Something we've wanted to do since the inception of the show. Something we will do repeatedly throughout the show's history.
I can't believe it took us this long to do a Gundam episode.
I know, it's taken us a long time. And I'm also really excited and slightly puzzled but overjoyed that Michael Huber is with us because like the way that it fell into place is he was just like, yeah, I'm gonna like try to watch some, and then he's just like, yeah, I watched all of it in like a day. Here I am, let's do the show. And so I was like, all right, awesome. We always love having Huber on.
Brad gave me the disc. The best way to get me to do anything is to hand me
Give him the
in
physical
person.
copy, yeah.
Okay.
Then it's done.
There are a lot of discs I owe you that I gotta get you.
You just hand me it, I'll watch
And then
it.
it'll happen.
Yeah, it just happens.
The proof is in the pudding, and the pudding is today.
Except if it's the Beatles movies.
Oh, right, the infamous Beatle movies.
Well, I tried to watch those with Beth, and our schedules kept conflicting, but
Excuses.
I failed on that.
I don't know about you guys. Gundam 8th MS Team, I always say 8th MS Team, but same thing, it doesn't matter, is my favorite Gundam that I've seen. And I'd held that opinion for a long time, so it was interesting revisiting it and seeing if it still holds up. That opinion still holds up.
Yeah,
Obviously,
holds up.
I still have a lot more Gundam 2 seen. There's a lot of Gundam that I haven't seen, but it's really good. It's a really good show. But before we get into it, Michael Huber, I want to start with you. But before we start with you, I want to tell the audience what this show is about. So this Gundam 8th MS Team is set during the 1 year war where the original Mobile Suit Gundam takes place. Specifically, it takes place 1 month after the start of the war, and it's focusing on this ground team. This ground team in, I believe Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And it's starts off with just kind of the bond between this crew, between Shiro Amada and his team, his 8th team. But eventually escalates into basically a story about war and peace and about different sides and different viewpoints. And it gets into a lot of broad themes, but it starts very, very, very small, and that's what I love about it. And although it definitely talks about the greater Zeon Earth Federation forces, it is really focused on this crew. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the Zeon, they're basically striking out for independence. That's why this war started.
They're the colonies from Earth.
Right. But Huber, this is your first experience with Gundam.
Yes.
Wait, what? Gundam
Yeah.
I thought you'd seen Gundam Wing.
I've seen, like, Gundam Wing, but never, like, sat down and, like, continually watched.
Okay.
Bits and pieces here. Seen some episodes on, like, Cartoon Network.
Okay.
You know,
But
and that
this
was
is-
years and years and years ago. So
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, this is my first real deep dive into Gundam.
Okay, so as your first deep dive into Gundam, it taking place during this war, was it overwhelming for you? Was it easy to understand? What were your first impressions? How did those impressions change? Like,
So-
give me it all.
I assumed there was a bigger war. You guys kind of prepped me on that. You're like, oh, it's kind of a side deal.
Yeah.
So usually I stress out about those details, about like, oh, like what's really happening in the grand scheme of things, like who are these people, who are these sides. I didn't care because what I was watching was so good that I just focused in and cared about what I was seeing on screen.
So when you say what you were seeing was so good and that you didn't care about, what specifically didn't you care about, and what specifically was so good?
Well, what was good was the friggin' mechs.
Yeah.
Fighting, obviously.
All right.
I
so
mean,
let's-
the very beginning starts out with the Zaku, like, pod scene, and then it just gets out this axe from behind. It's like, gosh!
So I always assumed that the Zaku's would be your favorite because
They have a hatchet, like axe
yes,
hatchet thing,
yes,
yeah.
and that ended up being the case.
Yes,
Okay,
Zaku
so that
fight.
was the standard Zaku
Yeah.
with the axe. That was your favorite.
Yeah.
Mobile suit.
And then when you asked about, like, what I didn't care about, like, those little details about the bigger picture,
Yeah.
I thought in my head, like, I love this so much. Like, when I'm all done with this and when I have the time to move on, like, I'll go in and watch the other Gundams. Like, this is making me care about the bigger universe.
Sure.
Like, I'm not gonna nitpick and stress about the little details now, like, because I love this so much.
Yeah.
I'll go back later and watch, the big battle and then think of this small scale battle, like, while I'm doing that.
Yeah. Think of it like this. So the original Gundam is like the main dish for this.
Yeah.
Like, I just watched that, so when I was watching this, I was like, oh, this is a reference to that, this reference to that. Like, talk about Jabberoo.
Yeah.
That's all stuff that happens. They showed,
There were, like, other planets there. Like, Odyssey was something. I was like, oh, that's something.
They showed Giran Zabi, who was from the original Gundam. They showed that, like, they had some scene, like, I was like, oh, I remember that from original Gundam. But yeah, like, the original Gundam is, like, the main game. This is, like, a nice side DLC dish kind of thing.
I want to talk
Very
to you
cool.
specifically about the last episode. We'll get there. I wanted to see if that was confusing for you at all. But I think what 8th MS team does really well is, and Brad and I was talking about this before the show, is that there are these references. There are these sort of little rewards. But you don't need it to understand the basics of what's going on.
Totally.
I think the basics are what's cool is I don't feel like it's oversimplified. I think in a lot of ways they do justice to these themes that they're bringing up. But it's a very human story. Despite all of this terminology with mobile suits and the colonies and this war, it is still a very grounded and down-to-earth story. What would you say was your favorite aspect of the show and your least favorite aspect?
Favorite aspect was, well, other than the jungle warfare.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that's my favorite aspect.
Yeah, actually, before we get into that, you mentioned the mechs right away.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Gundams and
Yeah.
the mobile suits themselves. As somebody kind of really being exposed to Gundam in a serious way for the first time, what makes those mechs cool? I mean, beyond the standard Hubert stuff of axes, melee combat.
So, believe the hype with beam swords.
Yeah.
Just believe it. Out of control. But my favorite thing, honestly, are the shields.
Okay.
I love that.
Oh, like the Gundams they
so much. I love that. That was something in Kyle and I always talk about it in Pacific Rim. I was like, dude, like I hope in Pacific Rim 2 they do the shields, because like looking at Gundam from the outside, I'm always like, oh, that's really cool. Like they have those giant shields that they can use offensively.
Yeah.
They can like stick them in the ground defensively.
Right.
Yeah, I just love the shields, and just like being in the center, like in the pod, you know? I like that. And like when other people are in there, like when Kiki joins him inside and they're both just like in the cockpit.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, there's some down there.
Yep.
Like, oh, that's cool.
I like, with 08th MS team, it's not afraid to get dirty. You were talking about those shields. There's a moment at the end where they're like desperately trying to hide behind the shields, and you see just how destroyed things get. You've got a battle between a Goof and one of the Gundams, and the way that it's just like hacking its arm and disabling it. There's a real physicality to the fights that I think is super cool. Another thing I really like, you talk about the guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
With each of these fights, between mobile suits or between mobile suits and some other force, I feel like there's always, like, strategy is just as important as these giant bipedal mechs, basically, where there's always some plan. Or when they're talking about going and saving the guerrilla village, they're talking about like, hey, we can't just get in there and fight. We got to be mindful of the guerrillas themselves.
Totally.
We got to strike from a distance. In the short, the Battle in 3 Dimensions short, it's really cool because Mikkel, like, bungee jumps off a bridge to get a read on the enemy's movements. And so that element, like, I don't feel like these mobile suits are just like, whoa, look at how powerful they are, they're just going to shoot beams at him. Like, there is actual warfare going on. There's actual strategy going on.
Yeah, I mean, you see that a lot with Mikkel and
Elador.
Yeah, like when they're in their like little tank thing, like listening on the ground. Elador's always listening, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
Like, really adds
Love
to it.
the recon team, dude.
Yeah.
Love it.
I just want to specify how cool it was going from normal Gundam to this, because in the normal Gundam, Amuro has like a beam rifle on the Gundam, like at all times.
Yeah.
But when they use a beam rifle, like at like one point in the show, or a couple of times, like it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh my God, he's got a beam rifle. They're like really stressing it. And
Yeah.
I'm just used to Amuro like always having a beam rifle, just fragging everybody.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, because I liked, like, there was one part, because I kept thinking in my head, I'm like, well, why don't they just keep using the beam stuff, because it's so OP. But then there was one little detail near the very end when Sniper was taking down the evac ship.
Oh, the evac ship, sure,
which
sure.
was, to me, the most emotional moment of the whole show.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness. Like, whoa. But he said, he was like, keep the coolant running. Like they were cooling it down for him. Like you could only do it for so long, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, nice little detail there where like if you use it, it's like you got to recharge it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's cool.
I think totally. There's so many moments in the show, and this is just one example, where they go out of their way to provide some sort of logic for this weaponry, or at least show it in a way where it appears a little bit more natural. Like the scene where Aina and Shiro are in that frozen wasteland, basically, and they're freezing to death, and so they use the beam saber, but they turn it down. They turn it down to warm it up just enough where they can help themselves up, and that is just such a cool element where it's like, oh no, this thing has different levels of power, and they're going in. It makes a beam saber feel a little bit more real, kind of like learning that the Jedis make their own lightsabers. Like that little touch. I think makes the lightsabers a little bit more cool that they have to go through this effort to get there. It's something like that.
I like to so when I think of Gundam, I think of flashy moves in space and like huge battles and like zipping around. Like I thought it was going to be more, not DBZ style, but I thought it was going to be more flashy and like faster.
Sure.
But then they reference like being on Earth, being on the ground, and you know, Shiro deals with that in the beginning. He says something along the lines of, we're not in space. Like it feels heavier or something.
Right.
So I thought that was an interesting element.
I think that's something that is so much fun about Gundam is there are so many different flavors depending on which era of Gundam you're watching. Where you have 8th MS Team and we're talking about how down to earth this is and all of that stuff, whereas you watch G Gundam and it's just like this is insane.
Yeah,
this is ridiculous.
Their actual Gundams were way more simple, like way more compared to a normal like GM mobile suit. Like they just had like a machine gun kind of thing. Like we're used to like Wing Zero with like two huge guns that like puts together and like makes like a nuclear explosion or something. Like these are very small scale like simple Gundams, which I thought was really cool. Like had that like 50 cal at a point or something like that, dude.
Do they explain that in like the tech? Like so you guys say this is during the 1 Year War?
Yeah.
In the 1 Year War, like elsewhere going on, are there way more advanced
like
Gundams?
So Amuro's is like I haven't seen all like the Gundams in the 1 Year War, but like Amuro's Gundam's like a little more advanced.
Okay.
Yeah, it's sort of almost like a space race kind of thing where Zeon striking out for independence, they're the ones to make mobile suits, and so then you have this project from the Earth Federation where they're making their own stuff to compete against the Zaku's and things like that, and that's where the RX-78-2 comes from, and the gun tank, and then the other one,
gun cannon,
the
red one,
the like red and white one,
the GM,
the GM, yeah, the GM.
What's the Goku of
Project
Gundam?
Victory?
What is it?
Sorry, this is the project. The Earth Federation is Project Victory. That's where those three.
You mean like Gundams of all time?
Yeah, what's like the Goku Super Saiyan?
I don't know, dude. There's so many Gundams. I don't even know.
What I was going to bring up is it's admittedly been a while since I've watched Gundam Wing, but I'm thinking about Gundam Wing, and that show is basically all about the Gundams, where it's like they are just so overwhelmingly powerful, these weapons of huge destruction. You talk about Gundam Wing with this huge beam that just destroys everything, whereas here you've got them piloting these Gundams, which I was looking on the wiki, and apparently they're built from like leftover parts from Project Victory, which was kind of cool, like repurposing stuff from that big initiative. But I don't feel like it's all about the Gundams here, which is really cool.
Like other mobile suits are much more of a threat, I feel like, than usual.
And even at the very beginning, where he's like, I'm going to use this ball, this thing that is not meant for combat, and we're going to get in there and I'm going to try to save you. And yeah, you see a bunch of different suits be really effective. It's not just like, okay, the Gundams are here, so therefore the day is saved, which I really like. But as fun as it is talking about the mobile suits of Gundam, I do kind of want to move on to the storyline of 08th MS Team. And I want to talk about how it changes from beginning to end. In my opinion, 08th MS Team starts out pretty lighthearted, where you've got this war going on, but you have these very likable people who are cracking jokes. You've got this banter between.
You got the shonen protagonist kind of thing like that.
Right,
That's
exactly.
what he feels like at the beginning.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I'm going to go to Earth and like totally save everything.
They're like doubting him, they're sneering him, calling him newbie.
Yeah.
And then you've got just kind of the little bit more nervous and kind of stammering, like, I don't know about this, Mikkel. The wisecracking Elidor, the no words Sanders, the Reaper Sanders, the kind of tough as nails Karen, all of that stuff. But basically you've got this not jokey, but kind of like brotherhood going on that's pretty lighthearted. But as the show goes on, especially once we get into the back half and especially the final third, it evolves dramatically. Not to the point where it's a different show, but I'm saying it's just grown so much where you have so much on the line. You have really serious stuff happening, and that a lot of that comes from Aina and Guineas. But I want to talk about that evolution. Which parts did you guys prefer? How did you feel about that shift? Did you feel that there was a shift? What resonated with you the most?
It came full circle for me because in the beginning when he meets Aina, I had no idea who the Zeons were, the Federation. I thought it was two sides of a coin. I didn't know whose side to take. I didn't know who was a villain, who was, And immediately when he meets her, they're on two different sides of the war, and I thought in my head like, oh, okay, this is going to be about, there's good on both sides, like the troubles of war, and I settled into it. I was like, this is gonna get heavy. Like, people are gonna die on both sides. Like, whose side am I gonna want to take? And that was at the heart of it, and I think it came back full circle, which I really appreciated.
Yeah.
The Zeon, it does show the Zeon doing some pretty horrific stuff.
It shows
the Federation doing some horrific stuff at the end too. So, that all of those elements were my favorite parts. And then of course the brotherhood of the 8th MS team, him saying like none of us are gonna die.
Yeah.
The thing with Sanders about, when Karen just like beats him up and is like, snap out of it, none of us are gonna die. It's not about you. You're selfish for thinking that.
Right.
So the brotherhood and just like the individual stories of everyone, like whichever side they were on, even the
guerrillas?
The guerrillas, but the 3 rogue Zakus that come to steal food.
I was going to say, that's one of like the best examples of showing.
They don't come to steal food. They come to ask for food. And the whole thing is like, why do you need the suits?
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, well, this is dangerous for us. But then you have that one asshole who ruins the whole thing and escalates the situation.
Yeah. And like she seemed like a good person, but then she wipes out all the people coming at her because she's
being
scared.
so aggressive that Shiro's got to fire. Oh, and that close up on Shiro's face when he's like,
a lot of good RPG shots in this series. A lot of good RPG, like right in the cockpit shots.
Brett, I want to throw a question to you, and then I want to throw it to Huber because I think it's going to be very important for this discussion. So something that Away the Mess team focuses on is this relationship between Shiro and Aina, who, despite coming from competing sides during this war, coming from adversaries, they're able to come together and not only have a better understanding of themselves, but an understanding of everyone. And they're able to, like, through each other, they're able to get tolerance for each other. Like, there's an end. At the end, Aina's, like, so upset that she's going to kill everybody. And then she sees Shiro, and she's like, oh, wait, like, people. These are people. We have to let go of our hatred and all that stuff. And so my question for you, Brad, is do you think the relationship between Shiro and Aina is convincing? Do you think the way that they come together is done well? Do you think there's an appropriate build-up there? And then do you think it is consistently justified throughout the show?
Interesting question. I was wondering this when I was watching it.
Sure.
And I was like, is this believable kind of thing?
Right.
But when they're together, they're both, 2 times they're in like, we have to work together, we're gonna die situation.
Yeah.
And I imagine that makes a certain bond between 2 people, especially very close. So I'm like, okay, I can kind of buy that kind of thing. Like the whole thing with her seeing Shiro at the end, because she really got set off when Norris went out in like the blue goof or whatever.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the whole thing, dude. The best.
Yeah.
But it's like, because that was like her father figure, kind of going out there.
Yeah,
and
basically.
he sacrificed herself. But
exactly.
like, But yeah, when she sees Shiro, she's kind of like, yes, there's more to, like, her brother's, like, chatting in the back of her head, trying to get her to do nut stuff. And I was like, yeah, I kind of believe it. I could believe it. Like, I haven't been in that situation where I have to work with someone or I'm going to die, necessarily on the other side. But it didn't feel that cheap to me.
Sure. Hubert, what about you? Do you think that relationship was believable?
I have kind of a rule, not a rule, but I don't know. My thing is I give love the benefit of the doubt in stories every single time.
Well,
single time.
I think just in general.
And in general, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter what. You know, if people fall in love immediately in a show or a movie or whatever, I'm like, cool.
So,
like, because
let me try
love
to unpack
has
this.
no rules, no boundaries. Like, people fall in love at first sight. Like, it just happens. So,
Okay.
you know, I always go with it.
So you have this optimistic mindset where you can buy people just immediately having that chemistry and falling in love and doing all that stuff. Yeah. Okay. I really like that.
Yeah.
That's a good
And
personal
exactly what Brad was saying, just about being in those types of situations.
Yeah.
Like, only enhance it, you know?
Yeah.
So.
For me, I do think the nature of this being 12 episodes, it happened pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But I think the reason it works for me is because those characters have reasons for why the other person is appealing to them. Where you think about Aina specifically, and I think Aina is the key to all of this, where she very clearly paints out, you not only see this with like her recollecting her past with her brother Guineas, but you also see it when they interact. Any time where she says something, her brother just shuts her down. Her brother very much treats her like a doll, and I love that scene where she's just like limbless, floating, and that representation. And if you think about how Shiro interacts with her, especially that first interaction, he's just like, no, like, I need you. We've got to do this. We're on equal footing here.
Yeah,
and it's almost
team.
like you have this door being open for Aina where it's like, oh, wait, no, I'm a person. I don't have to just listen to what I'm being told. And so
Yeah, what do you say? You need to be my arms and legs for me instead?
Exactly. And something there are things in Gundam, and maybe this is a good time to bring this up in this show that I thought were fascinating, and I wish they would have given me more of. So you have like the scene in the cockpit of the Obsolus where Guineas is saying like, this is why our mother abandoned us, and she's like, you can't make this a womb. And basically,
that line was haunting.
yeah, it was a really good line.
Whoa.
And you realize like, oh man, okay, so Guineas, his whole thing is that he feels inadequate, and this thing is sort of like him trying to replace his mother, and like, and he's the only one that can have it. That's why he has this obsession because of this traumatic past. And I wish there would have been a little bit more here. I love the
with Guineas,
idea
for sure, a little bit.
of this like psychotic person who's been driven to this obsession that's destroying everything around him because of this thing that he had with his mother, and using it as a motherhood replacement. I think there could have been a little bit more there. I understand that the show is already trying to deal with a lot. Maybe that's asking a little bit too much.
It's very similar to the original Gundam too.
Yeah.
With siblings kind of dealing with some like Char and Artasia, I think is her
Sure.
real name. Like dealing with that kind of struggle, and like Char being like driven to like madness, brutality, like obsessed with revenge, kind of thing like that.
Right.
Sibling drama.
It
Yeah.
has been years and years and years. Like, so I don't even know how long since I've watched the original Mobile Suit Gundam, and I thought I had a pretty good recollection of it, and I thought I had a pretty good recollection of 8th MS Team, but then when I watched it again, it's like, no, there was like so much more. So I need to go back and I need to rewatch
Is
Mobile Suit Gundam.
Logan wannabe guy in the other Gundams?
No.
Like Guineas'
no.
rival?
Yuri. You're talking about Yuri, the
Yuri.
soldier who is giving Guineas a hard time, but
Yeah.
respects his men.
Then that's the thing. It's
Yeah.
like, yo, you're kind of a sleaze. You come in like pining over on Aina.
I know.
I know.
You come pining
Yeah.
over on Aina, and then, you know, he's like, I'm gonna get all you back into space. I'm leaving nobody behind.
Right.
And like, oh, that's always so. That always messes with my brain. It's like you're kind of a bad person. You do bad things, but also like I respect that you're looking after your men. You're doing
Right.
that. That's a good thing. You know, and Norris, great character, my other favorite character in this whole thing.
Just doing his duty.
It's like you're doing your duty, but you're also helping create this weapon that will destroy millions of people.
Yeah.
But you're also just looking out for Aina, who is also a good person, and she's trying to do right by her brother. It's just so complicated. You know, it's so messy. It's
Yeah.
like, oh.
You're touching on something that I think the show does reasonably well, that I think always makes stories of war a lot more interesting, where it shows like, okay, when you're in a war, you kind of just have to make a decision about how you view the world because the situation is so intense, you could die at any moment, that you sort of have to adopt a personal and professional philosophy and just kind of go. And you see different personal and professional philosophies from a bunch of different sides. So you see Yuri, who's like kind of a dick, kind of ruthless, but he definitely respects his men. He sees the value, he sees the people in these soldiers. And then you also see that with Shiro, right, who has a great not only respect for his comrades, but tolerance and patience. You know, they underestimate him, but even when he's being underestimated, he looks out for them. He tries to save people. You see Aina, who eventually comes around to like, no, like we shouldn't, our first response shouldn't be violence. And so you have like different variations of these viewpoints on war, and it doesn't get like too wallowy in those different viewpoints. It's not going to be like, okay, in this episode we're going to focus on just this character and just this viewpoint and really examine it in depth. It kind of just throws them all in at the same time and kind of lets them play out, and I think that's pretty cool, pretty interesting. Do you guys agree with that? Do you think those viewpoints are given enough?
The philosophy of the characters, like in how they handle war, is like super important. Yeah,
sure. So talking about those philosophies, all of the different characters, especially in the 8th team, do have a backstory, or maybe not necessarily a backstory, but something that
there.
is some sort of anchor. So like with Mikhail, you got his like,
what was her name? BB or
BB.
something?
Yeah. He's got BB. He's got this woman that he's absolutely in love with. You've got Elidor, and he doesn't want to be a soldier. He wants to be a musician.
Yeah.
You've got Karen, who apparently has lost a loved one and is
Her
kind
husband.
of scarred
Yeah.
by the loss of a loved one.
And they show Shiro like flashbacks where he's on the colony.
Yeah.
And there's like people dying, like the blood wiped on his helmet.
And obviously you have Sanders, who his whole unit died, and people are calling him the Reaper, and you've got that whole thing that he's bringing up.
Multiple units.
Multiple units.
Yeah, the
on
Reaper.
the third mission.
Yeah, he's always the last survivor or the only one.
What do you think about those different, I guess, traits of those characters? How was that fleshed out? Was there enough given to those stories? Did
I
they
think
make
it
those characters
felt
interesting?
human
Sure.
with all these characters. They all felt like real, like people I could understand. You know, Eldor, he doesn't, like, people don't want to be soldiers sometimes who are in war, or a lot of times they don't want to be there, but they're kind of forced to the situation. And it felt nice, like, instead of just like gung-ho fighting for justice kind of thing, like they're struggling with this the whole time.
Yeah.
It's not easy for them.
Absolutely. I think, personally, if you're telling a story about war, especially a story about war that has very fantastical elements like mobile suits, that in order for the reader or the viewer to buy into what you're selling, to say that this is super serious and these people are going through a horrific situation, you need loss. And you need loss without any sort of like silver lining. It just has to be absolute loss. And you get that so much in this show. You get this with Aina and Gideon. You get this with Kiki and her father, who just gets melted. Just gets melted in that village. And I love the line where Kiki says, like, thank you for everything you've done, Shiro, but just like leave us alone and let us mourn. Like this is huge suffering for us. Do you think that the loss was sufficient? Was there any sort of period where a character was going through something traumatic that really stuck out to you?
I mean, yeah, all of it I could relate to.
All of it. All of it. Okay.
Like Kiki losing her dad, like you could totally feel that kind of like Shiro not wanting to kill people that don't need to die.
Yeah.
Like knowing that not everyone's bad kind of thing like that. Like, yeah, I could understand that. Like Karen losing her husband.
Yeah.
Like brutal, dude. Like Sanders, dude, just being like labeled as like the Reaper, dude. Just like dealing with that. Mikhail just kind of trying to survive, like dealing with this loved one, like when people are telling him like you're wasting your time writing love letters, like him just kind of dealing with that. It all felt very human struggles, like sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
The short, the Battle in 3 Dimensions, is completely non-essential to the story. You don't need to watch it to get what's going on with 8th MS Team, but it has one of my favorite moments at the very end, because it opens with Mikhail talking about Sanders and how he just doesn't talk, and he says in the show, "I'm a man of few words." and he's like, how do I deal with this? How do I this is unbearable. How do I kind of open up to this person? And at the very end, because in the opening scene, it's just focusing on Mikkel and it's just focusing on his face. And then at the end, you see Sanders, and you realize that he's been thinking the same thing too. And he offers Mikkel a cigarette. And Mikkel goes, well, I'm just a minor. And Sanders gets really embarrassed, and you see him blush, and he goes outside. And then Mikkel realizes he has that moment where he's like, oh, he was trying to open up to me. He was trying to share something with me, and I shut him down. And so he goes, hey, I can't have a cigarette, but if you want to have coffee with me, like, let's do this. And you see them opening up. And it's moments like that I think are even more effective than than characters saying in that very anime way, this is my philosophy on life. And then they're, like, monologuing at each other.
Yeah.
Where it's just simple misunderstandings like that. It's just simple differences in personality that are so hard to overcome. And like something as mundane on that happening during the middle of a war, I think it makes it just so much more relatable.
Do
Cool.
any of these characters come back?
No.
Not that I'm aware of.
I need more Sanders in my life.
I think that's it for
I
Sanders.
need more Karen. Karen and Sanders spinoff. Let's go.
So you're talking about that you want more of these characters in like future shows or whatever.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to you about, is there anything in the show that you just wanted more of in general? Is there anything, not necessarily that you found like bad, but lacking in the sense that you're like, oh, I wanted a bit more of that. I wanted to see where that line of thought was going, or I wanted to know more about that character.
I think you nailed it earlier. A little more on Guineas.
Gideon, sure, yeah.
A little
absolutely.
more.
I think I said Gideon earlier.
Yeah.
I just want to say right now, if we butcher any of the names, I
Yeah.
apologize. We're trying. We know these characters. We might just be, if we are saying the names wrong, please let us know.
Yeah.
Happy to take the correction.
A little more on that. Just maybe a little more about his mother or the family.
So
Because I
kinda
feel
talked
like
about
they
it.
kind of gave, like, especially in the earlier episodes, it was like, okay, we're focusing on the Reaper now. We're focusing on Karen now, kind of like it wasn't an episode fully dedicated to these characters, but it was like, okay, we're going to have a little more focus on them. Like when Elidor and Mikkel
They go to the
off,
village.
They go to the village, like, a couple characters got a little more focus. I could have used an episode that focused in, like, maybe entirely on Guineas and
Yeah.
Sure.
I could have used the episodes where they focused on the other teams a little more. Like,
Sure.
the only time you saw, like, the 7th team was, like, kind of, like, in the bar when they're all, like, fighting,
Right,
stuff
and
like that.
the other teams are basically just there to kind of rib the 8th team.
Yeah.
But you don't really get a good sense of what they're doing during the
Yeah.
war. Brad, I think that is a really good point, for sure. We talked about him several times. I could have used a little bit more on Norris. Because they're really in that episode where he goes and he fights to kind of give them
The escape
safe
route,
an
yeah.
escape route. They really established that relationship between him and Aina, but like that was really the only moment where I felt like they were trying to establish it, and it's like I could have done with a little bit more of this. Make him like, if you are going to make him seem important now, I would have liked to kind of have some build up to
there
this.
were a couple moments,
guess.
I think, when she went out on the balcony.
There definitely
Yeah,
were.
like
There
there's,
definitely
I got
were.
the sense like they had like a strong bond kind of thing, but like I mean, I can
Yeah.
totally see like maybe a little more.
A little bit more.
My
I think. I just think he's so cool. I think
He's
that's
so
part of
cool.
it. Yeah.
My favorite thing in anime ever is when someone sacrifices themselves and he has the line, he's like, I won, and then dies.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
You see like the gun tank like blowing up in the back.
I
Yeah,
love that.
Yeah, he gets it. He gets the gun tank.
So good.
I want to shift focus a little bit, and I want to talk about episode 12. I want to talk about Last Resort, because it is, I don't know, weird is probably underselling it, but it's definitely, it's an epilogue. It is an epilogue, and it ends up taking a different bent, like kind of a spiritual take on the show, where it's sort of expanding these themes in a spiritual and almost bizarre sense, where you open with these kids being shuffled into the ship, and you have no idea what's going on with them. And then you've got Mikkel and Kiki, and I love what they do with this, where BB's like gone off and married somebody else, and he has a photo of BB, and he like Sharpies out the dude's face. Like, talk about loss. That is a really good way to represent loss. And it's cool because you see Earth after the war. The war has ended, but I love the way that they visualize the effect of the war, where you just have these giant hunks of metal, these giant hunks of machine just in the middle of these otherwise completely gorgeous fields. I thought that was really powerful, visually. And but anyway, you get on and you have these kids, and you find out that Shiro and Aina have given them their own names, that they were being experimented on. They were like...
Are these new types? I can't remember.
The implication to me is that they're new types.
New types, yeah.
And that they were being experimented on, and Shiro and Aina found them, and they gave them the names of the 8th team. And they're like, Aina and Shiro are dead. Their graves are over there, but Aina's not the Aina that we actually know. And then the kids just disappear, and you have almost like Kiki and Mikkel walking up to Shiro and Aina like they're almost like deities at the end.
Yeah.
Where Aina's having a kid and Shiro's lost his leg, and the way that they're visualizing him is like he's like some sort of savior. And so I'm doing kind of a rough and tumble job of summarizing it, because I don't want to spend the whole time summarizing it. I want to spend time talking about it. And did you think that this was an effective epilogue? Do you like the way that they treated Aina and Shiro? What did you think about these kids?
I like when teams disband.
Yes.
And like certain people are left over. Like Kiki and Mikkel together was a pretty cool dynamic. I was like, they're the last ones remaining. They're still looking for Shiro and Aina. I thought that was really interesting. And then I didn't know what was going on with these kids and some evil experiments, some Umbrella Corporation action. I was like, is this tying into a larger...
I was like, oh, dude, new types? Like, I was freaking out.
I don't even know what that is.
Old Gundam, yeah. And, like, that doesn't come into Gundam till, like, way later in, like the series. Like,
so this was
that's,
kind
like,
of
near the end of the original Gundam. Because, like, people are, like, figuring out what new types are.
Whoa.
So I was like, whoa, dude,
they
new
have, like,
types.
psychic powers or what?
Kind of, like...
So new types have like...
They're like...
The idea is that it's a next step in human evolution because humans have been
Okay.
living in space. Like, this is their way of adapting, and so they have more mental awareness.
Yeah, they could, like, talk
I refreshed on this
telepathically and stuff like that.
I refreshed on this on the wiki before we shot the episode. So that's where I'm getting that from. Brad, how about you? Did this work as an epilogue for you?
I think so.
Okay.
I feel like 8th MS Team is kind of like less is more with their storytelling and leaving things up to you.
Yeah.
Which I'm always a fan of that kind of thing
Totally.
like that. So I thought it was appropriate. Yeah, like the way they're looking at like Shiro and Aina, like thinking in like they're deities kind of thing, like because they kind of are to them at least. That they saved the day. Those two, like
Right.
that's a huge step in the war. That one spot.
Really satisfying final shot.
It is.
Walking up to them because, like you said, Brad, it leaves it the best kind of ending. You know, it ends it and leaves it up to your imagination. You know, it fits nicely into both of those types of endings where it's so satisfying, it's over, and you can kind of imagine what happens next, which I really appreciate. And then there was a comment about, you know, what happened to the rest of the team. They went off, you know.
Just kind of living their lives now.
What do you think about if it ended with the episode before that, where we weren't sure of the fate of Aina and Shiro, and everybody else was
they just
looking?
show them like
In the credits.
But the team isn't aware. Like there's kind of that search, and they don't really have that closure. And so, do you think this dilutes the quote unquote sacrifice of
no,
Aina and Shiro?
I don't think so.
I like this ending like more.
Yeah, I like it.
I like it more too.
Yeah.
I'm used to like abrupt endings on Gundam, so it's business as usual for me.
Sure.
I was like, oh, cool. Yeah.
I was blanking on the name. But the kids were being experimented on by Dr. Flanagan.
Okay.
And
Does he show up?
He's in Mobile Suit Gundam. So
There
Dr.
it
Flanagan
is.
is a fictional character from the Mobile Suit Gundam anime series. He's the founder of Zeon's Flanagan New Type Research Institute.
So Flanagan is like Spencer's situation.
Sure.
Okay.
Something sort of
Through
similar
line.
to that. How do you feel with Last Resort? What I like is they do kind of give some further development to Kiki and Mikkel, and I love the way they're interacting with the kids. Again, just those scenes that humanize them so much when Kiki's teaching the kids how to like play home. That's such a heartwarming scene. But what I want to talk about is you don't get any closure with Sanders or Karen really, or Elidor. Did that bum you out? Do you wish there would have been some sort of inclusion from them?
I thought of like Kojima in Metal Gear and just like the tolls of war, you know? Mm-hmm. They go off, probably fight another day. It's just war.
But the war is over.
Well, like, there it is.
Yeah.
But, like, they go all, you know, war never ends.
Sure.
There's always a war to be fought. Mm-hmm. So I just imagine them going off and this just being a small chapter in a larger thing. So
that's what this Gundam series is to me. A small piece in a much larger story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I want to see more Karen and Sanders and Elidor and all of them. But...
You want the lost legacy with Karen and Sanders.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you want.
Yes. Where they go to India.
What did you guys think about the music? Specifically for me, the opening song has been stuck in my head since I've been watching it for this.
Elidor's song was a 10 out of 10. When it played on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
my God.
Loved it.
Like, they could have just... Some of the writing moments were really good, where they could have just had, like, oh, here's Elidor's song on the radio, but the fact that he requested it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so perfect.
And they're just like, oh,
such
my
a good
God.
Moment. One criticism that I do have, and I want to know what you guys think about this criticism, is... like we said, there was definitely a shift in tone for the show. It definitely got more serious as it went on. Not that it didn't have serious moments in the beginning, but as you were kind of ramping up to that final conflict between Aina and Gideus and Shiro, the music, there were moments, there was an episode, I don't remember which episode it was specifically, where it was like a really serious, dramatic conclusion, like a weighty final line. I don't even remember what the final line was, but then you have the ending where it's just Shiro just kind of hanging out, and I was like, that was a sharp cut. I kind of wish the ending could have changed here, or that you could have done it in a way that was a little bit more befitting, like just going from that to the ending of Shiro.
That's TV, baby.
It is TV, but it was something that caught me off guard. But do you think it's just...
I think that's like a... Like, if that's our complaint, that's like not a... That's like pretty minor, so like...
It is a mild complaint for
like,
sure. It's a mild complaint for sure.
Go back to what you said earlier about, like, what would we have wanted to see more? Now that we're talking about it and I'm thinking about it.
Yes, please.
Maybe a little more world building with the villages. You know, getting a little more of the civilian life.
Absolutely.
A little more of the human life.
How do you think they represented the guerrillas as a whole?
It was kind of confusing to me because there were the guerrillas and the village, like just the village people, and it was kind of hard to just see where they fell into it all.
Yeah.
You know?
I think a criticism that I have is, in a lot of ways, it felt like the guerrillas were there to give characterization to either the Federation or to Zeon, but didn't really have a lot in their own right. Like, especially early on when they're interacting with them, it's just kind of like they're like, oh, they were looting around. They're gonna take whatever they can get, and this is just their way of life. And oh, my Gundam is so dirty. Yeah. I do think it gets better later on. Yeah. And I think one of the most effective scenes is when Shiro is like let's not kill these people. Like, we don't have to do that. And they're like, no, we want justice. Yeah. Like that mob mentality, I thought was so frightening from the guerrillas. And I think they even show like a kid, and they're like, no, like get him. And you're like, oh man, that's what war does. You want that vengeance. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I do agree with you, Huber. I think they could have given them a little bit more. But when I think about that complaint, think about how much they crammed into 12 episodes. I know. And how, in general, told that story
And if you add any more, it kind of throws it all off, you know? Yeah. Like, what I saw was nearly perfect. So, yeah.
How did you feel about the guerrillas, Brad?
I thought they're okay. Like, the guerrillas were just one small village to me, kind of thing. Like, they showed that other town where people were being held, kind of. Like, there's probably guerrillas in there. I liked that they were kind of like savage about a lot of like the bloodlust, like, because it's their home, you know, like getting invaded, like their village elder got killed and everything like that. Like, it's very personal for them.
Sure.
Personal vendetta.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they did a pretty good job with the guerrillas.
Okay.
And Kiki, like, you know, being
Yeah,
the
I think Kiki was a
spokesperson
great
of it all.
character.
Yeah.
Like, the scene where they tell Shiro to get pretty much lost at the end is, like, pretty effective. Like, thankful, but they're tired of, like, everyone dying.
Cool. We're kind of getting toward the end here, but there's a couple more questions that I have for the panel here. What did you think about the relationship between Shiro and Kiki and the kind of the tension between them, the romantic and sexual tension between the two of them?
It was mostly one-sided, Kiki to Shiro.
Yeah.
The whole time. You know,
but he definitely looks after her.
Yeah, to me, he treats her like a kid sister kind of thing like there, but she wants more from him.
Okay.
Because she's probably never felt love before. That's kind of the vibe
she's
I got.
pretty young.
Yeah.
But what I like about Kiki is she's really like prone to insults and kind of like and a little bit more childish in the beginning. But you think about that last episode where she's taking care of these kids, and when her village gets destroyed, she loses her father. She grows so much, and I think they do a good job of showing that. And like when she sees Shiro and Aina, who's pregnant at the very end, it's clear that she's so happy to see Shiro, but she's also, to me, it looks like she's also accepted kind of the outcome of the situation. So I thought that was good. Last couple of questions. How do you feel about just the animation quality in general? Is there anything that was done with the animation specifically that you felt really stood out?
Beam sabers.
Beam sabers.
Beam sword. Whatever. What is it?
Just beam weaponry in general.
Beam weaponry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed how the mechs were destroyed a lot different compared to previous Gundams that I just watched. Like,
yeah,
a lot of the old Gundam was just like, boom, big explosion. A lot of this was just like them getting shot up and just kind of falling over, like smoke coming out of them.
Yeah, I love the way that they show the power of these ginormous weapons. You have the Obsolus, like, going through that mountain range and, like, turning stuff into glass, just completely destroying entire mountainsides. When a beam sniper or beam rifle shot goes through a mobile suit, the way that it just like expands and melts is
when
so
Norris
fantastic.
had the sword on one of those guys,
Yeah,
it was like
just,
and the blood,
the oil
out. The blood on the
symbolic.
So cool.
Yeah, it was very good. I have always said that, I mean, probably not to our audience. The audience probably is familiar with this. I just love the sound effects of Gundams.
Yeah, when they're walking.
Like, just the steps, the beam,
the
shots.
scale of it all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
this had a
just
good sense of scale.
When Kiki
Fantastic,
is up on a cliff and those three renegade ones are coming to
walking
get
through
the
like the
food,
river,
and they walk right by her. Oh, just such cool scale.
Definitely. Okay, great.
And when the giant nuclear weapon, the Anubis,
Obsolus.
When that did one of its final attacks near the end, when he targeted all the units in the Gundams and they just exploded and parts of them disintegrated.
Yeah,
that part was really intense.
A lot of precise shots, like right in the cockpit. I remember in that scene.
So intense. Reminding me of Akira, like at the end.
Yeah,
just
for
the
sure.
way things kind of.
We are at that part of the show where we're going to talk about
Norris.
our recommendations.
Can we talk about Norris for
is
like
our recommendation.
60 more seconds?
We're going to recommend Norris.
Yeah.
Hang him on your wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't get enough Norris versus Sanders.
You wanted a...
Sanders was out of his element, though. That's what I loved. You better, like, change your tactics or you're going to end up dead. He's better than us.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. That honesty. Like, no, you can't handle this guy.
And, like, his World of Warcraft shoulder pads.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of what shoulder pads they reminded me of. The warrior, like, which ones was
Valor?
Wrath, maybe? The can opener?
Sure. Oh, that was Valor, I think.
Okay, it was like Valor or Wrath.
Yeah.
It was one of those. Reminded me of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never know how the audience is going to react to our discussions. And there are a lot of things that we've touched on that I would like to revisit. But it was so much fun talking about Gundam
Oh,
with you guys. And Hubert, like,
It's a pleasure.
if we ever do Gundam again, like, I
10 out of
demand that you be
10.
on there because
God,
this
it was
was
so good.
the energy that you add and your enthusiasm for Gundam is so nice to see. Like,
good.
I didn't know how you feel about Gundam, and so you just gushing about it was really cool.
Love the small scale though.
Yeah, and
you know?
there's we're
This
we're
is
not
like the most small scale.
Yeah, that's what I love.
yeah, we're not Gundam experts, and so there's so many directions that we could go in. I've watched a little bit of Iron Blooded Orphans. That seems fantastic. I've never seen Zeta Gundam. I would love to see that. That's Kyle's favorite, so there's a lot of ground for us to cover for sure.
Yeah, I've seen some. Like, I've seen a lot, actually.
You've seen
like,
a lot,
I've seen
yeah.
Seed, but I don't remember anything about it.
I remember seeing a little bit of Seed way back in the day and not caring for
I
it.
just remember I hated the main character.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
Yeah, I
was
remember
like,
that
yikes.
too.
Yikes.
But I haven't given Seed a serious shot, so maybe we can
Is
return
it
to it.
all connected?
No, it's not all connected.
No.
So they have different timelines, or
Think of different universes.
okay.
yeah.
So it'd be like a Dragon Ball GT type situation.
No, because Dragon Ball GT is very much connected.
Yeah.
Where,
Okay.
it's like this
Wait,
is a different.
Then is Dragon Ball Super after Dragon Ball GT?
No.
But it's after Dragon Ball Z.
Yes.
Dragon Ball GT
But then
is not considered.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm.
But this is a different situation where it's
Okay.
like we're dealing with similar concepts, but this is a different storyline. Like this
Okay.
is not taking into account anything that happened.
Got it. Got it.
With certain
Got
things.
it.
Yeah. But G Gundam, I want you to watch because that's you would love that.
How many episodes is that?
I don't know how many episodes
Man,
G Gundam
Hubert,
is.
get ready for a different type of Gundam.
Yeah,
You watch that.
if you
dude.
like Pacific Rim, I think there's a very
Okay.
good chance that you'll
Yeah,
like G Gundam.
Perfect.
But we got to get to recommendations. Huber, since you are our special guest, I'm going to start off with you. Do you have a recommendation for the audience? If you don't, we can move on to Brian.
A recommendation of anime?
Yeah.
It can be anything. The guest rule is it can be anything.
Okay. Anyway.
If you got an anime, though, it'd be great.
No, I really want to rep the show, actually. It's not an anime, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
But Halt and Catch Fire.
Yeah, you've been talking about this for
Try
a
to
while.
bring this up every once in a while.
Yeah.
This
Why
is the,
should people watch it?
This is the final season. It's almost over. It's got a really, really strong cast. It has the female lead from San Junipero, Black Mirror. Something Mackenzie, I forget her name. She's in there. It's got oh my god, I'm drawing a blank right now. It's got Lee Pace. Lee Pace hype. It's got Scoot McNeary, I think his name is. Scoot McNeary from I'm done blanking.
All right, so we're just
He's in Monster.
We're getting a lot of
Real
like
deep.
why
Sorry,
these people
okay.
internet.
We're reading
Why
the
should
IMDb.
people watch the
10
show?
out of 10 cast. That's all I gotta
Okay.
say. But the show is about the rise of computer technology.
Okay.
It is about making computers. It is about the birth of the internet and Google search and video games. There's a heavy emphasis on video games in the later seasons. Like the newest episode just had an EGM review. Super hype. Super amazing show. Especially if you like video games. It's the video games are not a main focus,
But they're there.
but they're there. It is a subplot within it. Just a heck of a show. It's on AMC. There's only 4 seasons. Not a huge commitment.
Yeah.
And just really, really good. Really strong characters and an interesting time period, an interesting story.
Yeah.
Rise of computers. It's great. It's
Well,
great.
I mean-
and 4 seasons. It's a long period. They do a couple time jumps here and there, like couple, a year later, 2 years later type thing, months later.
They're covering a wide ground.
Yeah.
Not a particularly insightful comment, but considering our whole lives are run by technology. Our entire job, our entire livelihood
Yes.
is based on the success of not only technology but the spread of information. Everything we do, we couldn't do without the internet, and so going back and seeing that evolve and its impact at different points, I think, is a really interesting idea for a show. for
Absolutely. And I love when characters change and grow. And that is the center of this show.
sure. Halt and Catch Fire.
People growing and changing. Because we're not the same people when days go by.
Correct.
We change. We change
Right.
opinions. We change tastes.
Right, and we
we're
change
not
for-
rooted in this is me. I will never change. I am this person. It's like we can change and grow.
Right.
And-
Become completely different people.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about.
Brad, what do you got?
Sticking with the Gundam theme, I
Nice.
recommend Gundam Wing.
Okay.
The complete, like, polar opposite of this Gundam series.
Isn't
I'm
there like a recently released
Blu-ray.
or
There's recently released Blu-ray
Okay.
with the whole season. That's 2 Blu-rays, then the movie Endless Waltz.
Endless Waltz sounds like
which is after the show.
so
Sounds like a Castlevania
Gundam Wing
song.
will always hold a special place in my
Yeah.
heart because it was the first Gundam that I saw, and I know it was the first Gundam a lot of people saw
Yeah.
thanks to Toonami and things like that. Do you think that it's just this wonderful nostalgia trip, or do you think Gundam Wing is interesting and has something to say right now for people who don't have that Toonami connection?
And like I haven't seen it in a long time, you know,
Yeah.
kind of thing, so I can't remember, maybe remember all those minute details. But I think it's just a really cool polar opposite of what this Gundam is, the 8th MS team is. It's really flashy Gundams.
Yes.
Like, crazy designs, dude. Like,
I mean,
like
in
one
this
of them
world,
has a scythe, you know?
yeah, you got like angel wings with
Angel Wings,
Yeah.
big Gatling guns,
So
like
it's-
huge
oh, yeah.
scale, like wiping out like 40 guys by themselves. Like
So-
these Gundams are
So
powerful.
it's Platinum Games.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
yes, yes,
You've
yes.
got Heavy Arms who's got this huge Gatling gun, but then his chest opens up
With
and
more
you've got
Gatling
more
guns.
Gatling guns, and then he's got Gatling guns.
Yeah, there's
he's
like
got
a
machine
Gundam
guns
with
on
like
his
a
head.
dragon arm, dude, like latches on his stuff and shoots fire
And then
out.
the second edition of him, they just like double up on the guns.
Yeah.
It's like the new version of this Heavy Arms is just going to be more
Yeah,
guns.
Death
guns.
Sight's
So
like you
great.
had one blade before, you got 2 now
Yeah.
on
Oh
this
my
thing.
God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Do
great.
people have shotguns?
I don't remember
Mobile
shotguns.
suits with shotguns, and I don't know, there's some cool like machine guns though. I remember like the Leos,
Yeah.
which are like
I,
the most
I think there's a
basic.
lot of fertile Hubert
I
ground.
feel like the Zaku's in this should have had shotguns.
Yeah,
because
I
then
bet
they could have
you
had
do.
shotguns and
I bet you
axes.
do.
It would have been a
Yeah,
dream.
I don't know. that
Beam
could be-
shotguns.
Yeah, some really
Beam
cool,
shotguns where they shoot it, but they still have cartridges, so they gotta like.
really cool,
Yeah.
like just Gundam designs, like really out there kind of designs, like huge whips
I
and
bet-
stuff like that. Yeah, really cool stuff like that.
Beam whips?
But we're gonna get like some crazy Gundam
Don't
shotgun
think a
we've never heard
beam
of.
whip, but it's like a big, like huge whip.
Okay. You can like latch.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really,
think-
I actually like the cast in that series too. Like Duo,
Oh,
I
yeah,
love
Duo is
Duo.
great.
Hero is hilarious.
Hero is-
like the most like
Most of them are hilarious.
Most try hard.
Yeah.
Like
Do
okay,
they
like,
do they fight on planets on
very
the ground
edgy.
more, or is it
in Gundam Wing? It's both.
Okay, okay.
There's yes.
but there's a
great
lot more.
space battles.
Okay.
Yes.
Is the
Yes,
emphasis on space in the other?
Yeah, like the
Gundams?
original mobile suit. There's like it's like 50-50.
Okay.
And I think that's what's so cool about 8th MS Team is how grounded it is.
Yeah,
and
that's
how,
what
how
makes it
relatively
really
little.
rad. Yeah, it's really like scaled down. Like yeah, it's super cool. But like Gundam Wing is nuts, dude. It's really fun.
Sounds crazy.
Yeah.
Brad,
It's
you
good stuff.
successfully got me
I'm
excited about
hyped
Gundam
on
Wing.
that.
Yeah.
Oh my
dude,
gosh.
it's so fun.
Sounds like chaos.
Really cool characters too, dude. Like some bad guys are awesome in that,
Yeah.
dude. You're gonna like. I already know who your favorite character is gonna be in my head already.
Nice.
Uh,
I love just a Zaku eye, like
oh yeah, and I love that the Opsilus had the eye as well.
Yeah, when it,
The
like,
big
looks
machi-
around.
Yep, the mobile armor.
No
Yep.
Zaku's in Wing though, dude. No Zaku's.
Zaku.
No Zaku's.
No,
Yeah,
different, completely different mobile suits.
Different thing.
They
yeah.
look cool though. There's like a lot of variety.
okay. But Zaku show up here and there.
I mean, there are plenty of things that are very Xeon-like.
Yes,
So,
but not your typical like Cyclops Zaku thing going
Yeah.
on there.
yeah.
But yeah, Gundam Wing's hilariously good fun.
Yeah, it
Sounds
is.
crazy.
Very good fun. I'm going to close this out today. It's not Gundam, but something that I was surprised that I haven't recommended before, Tokyo Ghoul. So Tokyo Ghoul, along with Kill la Kill and Attack on Titan, I would say, kind of like really kickstarted my interest in anime again in a big way. And Tokyo Ghoul, I really like Kill la Kill, but the reasons I like Tokyo Ghoul are completely different from Kill la Kill, where I just love the insanity of Kill la Kill. I love the story and the themes of Tokyo Ghoul so much. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Tokyo Ghoul, basically what it's about is humans and ghouls living side by side. And ghouls, for all intents and purposes, look exactly like humans, but they need to eat people to survive. They can eat normal food, but it tastes absolutely repulsive to them. They can't stand it. It's disgusting. But some of them pretend like they like it and then throw it up in order to fit into human society.
Yeah.
And so that is, to me, the biggest selling point on Tokyo Ghoul, and the way to sort of encapsulate it is seeing these characters try to interact with each other, and you have some ghouls who feel like they're completely superior, that they should just be able to kill humans, and some of them do it just for sport. Others are like, no, like we need to try to live amongst them. Like peace is the better option. But Ken Kaneki, the main protagonist, is the one that really brings it all together because he is a human turned half ghoul. And so it's interesting because you get his perspective where you see the news, and obviously they're kind of villainizing ghouls, and they're treating them sort of like this terror threat. But then he becomes one, and he actually gets insight to, no, like these are actual, not people obviously, but these are actual, like they have emotions, they have things they're going through, they have humanity to them. They're going through all that stuff.
That sounds heavy.
Yeah. And
does he have a brother?
Does Ken Kaneki have a brother? No, he doesn't have a brother.
Brother drama.
But he has a best friend who is a human who ends up like working for this anti-ghoul organization, and so he's got to deal with that.
Does the best friend know he's a ghoul?
No, he doesn't know he's a ghoul.
Best friend drama.
Or at least, like, so I've read, the manga is the best way to consume it. I got started with the first season of the anime, and really liked it, but then I went and I read the manga. I haven't read the final volume of it yet. This is volume 14. This is the only one I haven't read. So I need to read that. I need to finish off the storyline. But the anime
overwhelms me, Ben.
What's up?
Is like the manga and the anime, the combo intimidates me so much.
Well, sometimes
because like I still have so many Batman comics to read.
I get you.
And it's like the manga's the creator's intent, but the anime I heard is really cool.
Just pick one, dude.
And it's like way easier to get through, but then the anime will just stop and like berserk, and the manga is like 10 years ahead.
Let me lay it out
like,
for people.
What do I do?
I think people should consume Tokyo Ghoul because I think it is fantastic. But the thing about the anime that's really frustrating is it just stops.
There it is.
It just stops at a certain point, and it stops at a pivotal point.
Yeah.
It's a huge cliffhanger. But then the second season of the anime it's called Route A, and Ken Kaneki makes a different choice in the anime than he makes in the manga, so it's sort of like a different path that he takes.
Whoa, clear.
But I haven't seen the second season because everybody, and I mean everybody that I respect, has told me that it is garbage.
Whoa.
And I'm sure some of you probably like it. That's true. I was just personally told to stay away.
Oh,
and so
controversial.
What I've heard, and based on my own personal experience, is that the manga is fantastic. If you are looking for a definitive version, my understanding is that this is the way to go with the manga. Read the manga; it's fantastic. The art is great. I mean, just look at this art in here. It's fantastic.
Actually, I have
the way they represent.
I have a couple really quick questions for both of you.
Yeah.
One, is Tokyo Ghoul the manga still going?
So there is like Tokyo Ghoul. It stops at volume 14. This is the final volume of Tokyo Ghoul. But then there's like, I forget what it's called. There's this. It continues afterward with it has a new name, but it's essentially like the sequel story,
like Shippuden
which I haven't read yet.
Okay.
But I forget what it's called. I'm blanking on the name for some reason. But yes, it continues. Cool. But the first part of it does end, which is a little bit surprising to me going into the final volume. It feels like they have so much to wrap up that I'm not surprised that there's more story afterward.
And then did Gundam start as an anime or a manga?
Anime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or there are Gundam mangas? I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And what is like the newest? Is there a new current Gundam coming out?
Blood, coming out. I think Iron Blood Orphans the current one.
So Gundam Thunderbolt is also very recent.
Okay.
But
is there one currently right now airing like every week?
Not that I'm familiar with.
Is Iron Blood Orphans over?
My understanding of I'm still very early on in Iron Blood Orphans, but I think Iron Blood Orphans is wrapped up, or at least the season of it is wrapped up.
There's always going to be Gundam.
Yeah, exactly. There's always going to be Gundam. Yeah, that's true. But what I want to say about Tokyo Ghoul, and I want to like impart this lesson because I think it's a good lesson for people who like are not set in their manga/anime ways yet and may be interested in expanding or getting into it or whatever. Like I started with the anime with Tokyo Ghoul and I liked it so much that then I got into the manga. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to keep going with this. I love it so much. And I think like we've talked about with Yakuza before is people get so hung up on the correct way to do something, and I just totally don't buy in that philosophy. Like, people are worried that they'll be made fun of for watching dub if they prefer dub, or that they have to watch sub, or that they don't know whether to do the manga or the anime, and they get intimidated. And it's just like, I understand it, but don't let people who are, like, freakishly making you feel bad for enjoying
don't let 'em
something.
bully
Like,
you.
don't listen to those people.
Yeah.
And then I think it is healthier for people to just try something and go with it and learn as they go along, rather than be so intimidated and not experience something that could have a dramatic impact on their life, or maybe not a dramatic impact, but some sort of impact, right? Like, there are so many stories that if I just didn't take a risk and dive in, I wouldn't have gotten to experience, and they wouldn't have enriched me. I feel bad for blanking on that sequel series for Tokyo Ghoul, but it's like, I'm also the kind of person where it's like, okay, I have the final volume of this to deal with. Like, that's what I'm focusing on right now.
You don't even want to look into it.
Right. When because potential spoilers and all that stuff. And it's like, when I cross that bridge, I'll get there.
Exactly.
I am very one-track mind.
Yeah.
when
Block
gets
it
that
out.
way.
That's why I haven't looked on DB Super at all.
Sure.
Because I still want to go through Kai.
Right.
Like, I've watched all of Dragon Ball Z like 2 or 3 times, or I've only seen the Buu Saga like once.
Sure.
But like, I want to go back fresh before I take the deep
I
dive
feel like
into Super.
Seen the Saiyan and Namek sagas
Like 15 times.
I'd sell multiple times. I think I've only seen Buu once.
Buu
as well.
one time, yeah.
Yeah. Dragon Ball. We're gonna do a Dragon Ball episode. It's gonna be insane. It's gonna be too long. But speaking of too long, I think we're gonna wrap up the show. Either Brad or Huber, if you ever get a chance to do Tokyo Ghoul,
It's been on my radar.
yeah, I think you would both really enjoy it, and it's not too long to consume. So check that out. But anyway, that's gonna be an episode of EZAnime. Yeah,
This
it's
is
great.
the best cover
It's
great.
a good one.
I've ever seen.
We're gonna do more Gundam. We're gonna do so many more things we have a huge list of stuff that we want to do. But thank you all for tuning in to this episode. In the post, I'm going to, once we kind of nail it down, tell you on Patreon what our next series is going to be. So look out for that. But thank you all for watching. If you want to support us, the way we can do more anime stuff and just keep this thing running is on Patreon. Please go to patreon.com/EZAllies and check us out there. There's also a lot of good information about other things that we're doing on there, which is really important. But I want to especially thank Bradley Ellis, as always, for being on the show. And Michael Huber for putting the effort to watch the whole thing and get here and be that
late.
third voice, man.
I was up late and
Yeah.
up early.
After the Destiny raid, too.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. So thank you, Michael Huber.
Oh my gosh,
for
that
joining
show.
us.
It was a pleasure.
Good. I'm glad
Gundam.
you liked it.
Gundam hype.
And thank you once again, audience, for watching. We'll see you on the next episode at the end of next month. Bye.
嵐の中で